Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice Radio. So today, we're going to be taking a little bit of a look at Mawile-GX. Now, this was revealed overnight on the Japanese channel, the website and all that, and has been translated by the lovely David Hochmann. And Mawile's one of those, it kind of ignores a lot, and then it doesn't. We did have a Mawile-GX and a Mega Mawile-GX, but they were both absolutely terrible. And I keep doing research into these Pokemon in advance of videos. I keep finding amazing artwork, like this Mawile about which I'd completely forgotten from Plasma Freeze, only to find out it's drawn by Mitsuhiro Arita. He is the best illustrator, but many of the others are also awesome. But this is not about that card, this is about Mawile-GX, and this is a very handy tech indeed. So, it's a metal Pokemon, which means you're hitting weakness against fairy Pokemon like Gardevoir-GX and Sylveon and Gardevoir-GX, which is pretty good to be fair. They are both really good Pokemon, so that's nice. And you've got 170 HP, which it's in line with Tapu Lele. It's quite low, but the worst thing about 170 HP is that Pikachu and Zekrom's Tag Team GX attack hits 170 to the bench, so this will allow them to take 2 prizes off the bench, so 170 is actually really bad. Resistance to Psychic is quite nice against Malamar decks, which are still around. Weakness to Fire is a bit of a pain because Blacephalon still rules the format. And also, right, we're getting stuff like Reshiram and Charizard Tag Team GX. It's going to be a bad time to be Fire weak. But the retreat cost to 1 is low and you get a Skateboard. As for the extra tricks you get being a metal Pokemon, if you don't want your weakness, you can use Metal Frying Pan, which will also reduce damage done to you by 30, which is really handy because then you will actually survive that hit from Pikarom. Or you can use Metal Goggles if you prefer. But what does it actually do? Well, according to David, the ability says once during your turn, when you put this Pokemon from your hand onto your bench, you may look at your opponent's hand and put as many basic Pokemon as you find there onto their bench. It is literally captivating Pokepuff. You just get to bench as many of their Pokemon as you like from their hand. This is really nice, and to be honest, right, this is good in the way Captivating Pokepuff was good. It means you can fill up their bench. Now, what you could do is, if you're going first, just make them bench all the Pokemon they didn't want to bench. Just fill up their bench. Maybe they're saving a bench space for some Pokemon like Kartana GX to bench it and use the ability, which is an enhanced hammer. Well, they can't, because they don't have a bench space rolling. But it's better than that. It's things like making them bench a Tapu Lele, or soon, when the next set comes out, a Dedenne GX, and because you're benching it, they don't get to use the ability. And then, of course, there's all those Pokemon that hit more damage, depending on how many bench Pokemon your opponent's got, like Mawile. More on that in a moment. So you can increase the amount of damage that you're doing. More on that in a minute. You can fill up their bench so they can't bench the things that they want to bench. And you can bench their Pokemon that have coming into play abilities without letting them use the coming into play ability. So, if this is so good, how come Captivating Pokepuff never saw more play? We had stuff like the Lucario, the Fight Alone Lucario, which did extra damage for each Pokemon fewer than your opponent you had in play. And yet, Captivating Pokepuff never saw a huge amount of play. Incidentally, we are getting a Crabominable soon, link in the description, which is better than that old Lucario. The thing is, there were 2 reasons. First of all, it was too unreliable, and secondly, you couldn't search Captivating Pokepuff, whereas Mawile, you can just grab it with an Ultra Ball. Remember, you cannot grab it with a Nest Ball, because although you could use it and bench it, you're benching from the deck, not the hand, so you wouldn't get the ability. So we like the ability, and it is possible to play this just for the sake of the ability, but we've got some nice attacks as well. The first attack, 1 metal, 1 colorless energy, 10 damage. This attack does 30 more for each of your opponent's benched Pokemon. So clearly the goal here is to just get a full bench on your opponent's side, at which point you'll be doing 160 damage for a metal and a colorless. And 160 damage for 2 energy is good. Look at Mawile-GX. Mawile-GX does 160 damage, same amount, for 3 energy. And you can't use it next turn. Look at Hochmann-GX. Yes, they do actually go up to 180 damage, but that's for 4 energy, and they can't use it next turn. Doing 160 flat out is great. 160 for 2 energy is a great amount of damage if they've got a full bench. Straight away, you're getting non-GXs. Things like Solgaleo Prism Star goes down. Things like the Stage 2 Empoleon are going down. And then, of course, against GXs, you will get the Dene. Yay! Except you won't because it's got a resistance, which means the only GX you'll get is Marshadow, which is not terribly inspiring. But if you had a choice band onto there, then you're up to 190, and then you're getting stuff like Tapu Lele, like Buzzwole, etc. It's not the most amount of damage ever, but we can do stuff with it. And at this stage, I should remind you about Dhalmise. You see, Dhalmise from Guardians Rising has the lovely Steelworker ability, which lets you do an extra 10 damage to your opponent's active Pokemon if you are a Metal Pokemon. So now all of a sudden with one of these you're up to 200, there's Lycanroc, and with 2 of these you're up to 210 and there's Zoroark. That ain't bad. And Zoroark is a great example to use here because Zoroark is going to want to have a full bench. Because Zoroark does 20 damage for each of their own Pokemon in play. So they want to have a full bench to make sure that they're doing as much damage as they can. And you'll need 2 Dhalmise and a choice band, but you will then get a 1-hit KO for 2 energy, which is pretty good. And even if Zoroark doesn't want to bench their Pokemon, you can do so using the ability. They're likely to be playing enough basics, because in other matchups they want the full bench. We have seen over in Japan the rise of quad decks like Pheromosa and Buzzwole. And if they're only playing 4 Pokemon, you're rarely going to hit with your ability, which means you're not often going to be able to do that much damage. And that is one of the downsides here. The other downside is attack cost. If you're behind on prizes, you can use Counter Gain, reduce the attack cost by 1 colorless energy, and then it's just 1 metal energy and you're good. That's quite nice. We have got the aforementioned Solgaleo Prism Star, which can accelerate a bunch of metal energy with its first attack. And you do have Magnezone, but Magnezone lets you put as much metal energy down as you like. There are better partners for Magnezone. I'm not loving Magnezone here, if I'm honest with you, ladies and gentlemen. I don't think that's the way to go. So even though it's quite a cheap 2 energy attack, you do need to think about where that second energy is coming from. Could be Counter Gain. You could use Solgaleo to get 1 energy on 3 different Morale, and then you're set for the entire game. But just bear that in mind, you've got to get that second energy. Of course, you could in the early game just sit there with my boy Registeel and just get a bit of energy round that way. As for the GX attack here, same cost, metal and a colourless. Look at your opponent's hand and discard all supporter cards that you find there. This could be a game-winning attack. This is the kind of attack whereby you play it down, you use this attack, and if you time it correctly, you win the game. What do I mean by correctly? Correctly means your opponent doesn't have a great board setup. Your opponent doesn't have what they need, but it's not one of those turns where they didn't play a supporter last turn. If they didn't play a supporter last turn, they probably haven't got one. In fact, if they didn't draw a prize, they definitely haven't got one. If they drew a prize, maybe they do, and maybe you want to use the attack. If they are sitting there, and let's say they use Professor Round's lecture, and it's early in the game, and they got all of their basics out, but they haven't got any evolutions on the board, they didn't put any energy down. It's a classic, I'm going to use Professor Round's lecture turn 1, and then turn 2, I'm going to use something like Cynthia, and then from there, I'm going to build up my board state and try and win the game. If you can time this correctly, you can absolutely crush. The other thing you can do here is time this after something like a Judge. So what you do is you put them down to 4 cards in hand using Judge. Marshadow would do the same thing. And then you use this GX attack. So now, Best case scenario, they've got 4 cards in hand, no supporter. Worst case scenario, they've got 0 cards in hand because they just drew 4 supporters. There are ways around this. If your opponent has a Tapu Lele in hand, this is going to be a pain because they can just play it down. If they've got an Ultra Ball, yeah, they can search out Tapu Lele. Same thing for Dedenne. But what you could do here is combine this with a Alolan Muck. Now, Alolan Muck will turn off your Dalmise and will turn off Mawile, so we're talking different strategies here. But if you can use this GX attack to get rid of their supporters, when they've got a low hand size, they don't have much on the board, and then you use Alolan Muck, so they can't use Tapu Lele, they can't use Dedenne, they can't use a Rangaroo. Yeah, there's still the odd thing like Macargo that could save them, but you could end up completely locking them out of the game here, and that would be hilarious. I like Mawile. I like the ability as a searchable captivating Pokepuff. I like the attack. It's a little bit on the weak side, especially in the era of Tag Team GXs, but you've got to remember it's only for 2 energy, and you have still got Dalmise. And I like the GX attack when used correctly because it is not the easiest one to use. So I'm going to go ahead and give this 4 Wassies. It's not a perfect card. There are issues with it, but I do think there is also a lot of potential. But I would very much like to know what you think about this. So please do let me know in the comment section. Go nuts. But please do remember the rule, ladies and gentlemen. Be nice, would you? And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at The Wassie, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all of that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassiePlays, where we talk about other games that don't even have Pokemon in. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.